What if wealth isn't something you work for, but something you tune into? Most people spend their entire lives chasing money, never realizing they are sprinting in the wrong direction. They're grinding, sweating, and struggling, yet the bank account stays stagnant. But there is a group of elite individuals throughout history, from industrial titans to modern visionaries, who seem to operate on a different frequency. They don't chase, they attract. They have discovered what R.J. Purcell calls the money magnet switch. Welcome to the audiobook of Metaphysical Millionaires, a guide to enlightened manifestation. Imagine your mind is a sophisticated biological radio. Right now, you might be tuned to the frequency of scarcity, static, stress, and not enough. But by flipping a specific internal switch, you can recalibrate your entire reality to the frequency of abundance. This isn't just wishful thinking or woo-woo magic. It is the intersection where ancient metaphysical laws meet the cutting edge of quantum physics and neuroscience. In this audiobook, we are stripping away the fluff to give you the exact mechanics of the money magnet switch. We will explore how your subconscious beliefs act as a financial thermostat, why trying too hard actually repels wealth, and how to align your internal identity with the external riches you desire. If you are ready to stop being a seeker and start being a receiver, pay close attention. We're about to bridge the gap between the spiritual and the material. It's time to flip the switch and transform your reality from the inside out. If you're feeling a spark of curiosity right now, that's your frequency starting to shift. Don't keep this breakthrough to yourself. Hit that like button to help this energy reach more people, and share this audiobook with someone you know who is tired of the grind and ready for a transformation. You never know whose life you might change just by passing along the right signal at the right time. Now, let's dive into the world of the metaphysical millionaires. Chapter 1. The Keys to the Kingdom. Power, hidden in plain sight, has always been waiting for you, not in distant galaxies, not in secret societies, but in the quiet architecture of your own awareness. And as you begin to listen closely, you start to realize that what you once called coincidence, luck, or fate is actually a system, a set of invisible laws shaping your reality with astonishing precision. Right here, in this very moment, you are stepping into a deeper understanding of what metaphysics truly means, not as something abstract or mystical, but as the study of the fundamental nature of existence, where reality is not fixed but responsive, where consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain, but a driving force behind the universe itself. And as you allow this idea to settle, you begin to notice how your thoughts, your emotions, and your beliefs are not passive experiences but active participants in shaping the world around you. As this awareness expands, the question naturally arises, what exactly are you interacting with? And the answer reveals itself in layers. Metaphysics is the exploration of the unseen frameworks that govern physical reality. It is where quantum physics meets consciousness, where neuroscience meets intention, where energy, frequency, and information converge into form. And when you begin to see reality through this lens, you stop viewing life as something happening to you and start recognizing it as something happening through you. That realization alone shifts something profound inside you. Because if reality is not fixed, if it is influenced by observation, then the role you play becomes infinitely more significant. And this is where the idea of the quantum shift begins to emerge, not as a distant scientific theory, but as a lived experience, where your focus, your expectations, and your emotional state begin to reorganize the probabilities of your life. And as you sit with that, feeling the weight and possibility of it, another truth gently surfaces. The time to engage with this knowledge is not someday, not when everything feels perfect, but now, because every moment you delay is a moment where unconscious patterns continue to shape your outcomes, and every moment you step into awareness is a moment where you reclaim authorship over your future. There is a quiet urgency in this realization, not driven by fear, but by potential, because the systems you are about to understand are already influencing your finances, your relationships, your health, and your sense of purpose, whether you are aware of them or not. And once you see them clearly, you cannot unsee them. Which brings you to a powerful idea, one that challenges conventional definitions of wealth, the concept of a metaphysical millionaire, not someone who merely accumulates money, but someone who understands the deeper mechanics of creation, someone who aligns thought, emotion, and action in a way that allows abundance to flow naturally and sustainably, someone who recognizes that wealth is not just financial, but energetic, intellectual, and spiritual. This kind of wealth does not come from chasing outcomes. It emerges from alignment, from what can be described as vibrational coherence, where your internal state matches the reality you intend to create. And neuroscience begins to support this, showing how repeated thoughts form neural pathways, how beliefs influence perception, and how perception shapes behavior, creating a feedback loop that either limits or expands your possibilities. And yet, as empowering as this sounds, you might wonder why this knowledge is not universally applied, why more people are not living in alignment with these principles. And the answer lies in the invisible barriers that most individuals never question, deeply ingrained beliefs about scarcity, about worthiness, about what is possible, beliefs that operate beneath conscious awareness, shaping decisions, filtering opportunities, and reinforcing the very limitations they create. These subconscious programs are powerful, but not permanent. And this is where the idea of active information becomes relevant, a concept rooted in quantum theory suggesting that information itself has the ability to influence physical systems. And when applied to your life, it means that the quality of your thoughts, the clarity of your intentions, and the consistency of your focus carry informational patterns that guide your outcomes. As you begin to integrate this, you start to see how intention is not just wishful thinking, but a directive force, a way of organizing energy and attention toward a specific outcome. And when combined with emotional engagement, it becomes even more potent because emotion acts as an amplifier, signaling to your subconscious mind what matters most. And as this internal alignment strengthens, something remarkable begins to happen. You enter into a state of co-creation, where you are no longer forcing results, but collaborating with the underlying intelligence of the universe, a process that feels less like struggle and more like flow, where opportunities appear with unexpected timing, where solutions emerge with surprising clarity, where effort is still required, but it is guided, efficient, and purposeful. Still, this journey is not about constant control, and here lies one of the most profound paradoxes you will encounter, the paradox of surrender, where true manifestation requires both intention and release, where you define what you desire with clarity and conviction, and then you let go of the need to control how and when it arrives, trusting in a larger process that operates beyond linear logic. This balance between action and surrender is what can be called the golden middle path, a way of living that integrates ambition with awareness, discipline with flexibility, effort with trust. And as you walk this path, you begin to notice a shift not just in your external results, but in your internal experience, a sense of calm confidence, a reduction in anxiety, an increase in clarity. And within this state, gratitude begins to take on a new dimension, not as a polite gesture, but as a powerful energetic alignment, what can be described as radical gratitude, where you appreciate not only what you have, but what is unfolding, even before it fully materializes, sending a signal to your subconscious and to the broader field of reality that you are already aligned with abundance. As this practice deepens, meditation becomes less of a task and more of a gateway, a space where the noise of the external world quiets down, allowing you to access deeper layers of awareness, where insights arise, where limiting beliefs can be observed and released, where new patterns can be installed with intention and repetition, supported by the brain's natural ability to rewire itself, a process known as neuroplasticity. In these moments of stillness, you begin to sense what can only be described as non-local reality, the idea that consciousness is not confined to your physical body, that information and connection exist beyond space and time. And while this may seem abstract, its practical implication is simple yet profound. You are more connected, more influential, and more capable than you have been conditioned to believe. And as this understanding becomes embodied, your sense of purpose begins to clarify, not as something imposed from outside, but as something emerging from within, your inner purpose, a guiding force that aligns your talents, your passions, and your contributions in a way that feels meaningful and sustainable. And when your actions are rooted in this purpose, wealth creation becomes a byproduct, not the sole objective. From this place, entrepreneurship transforms. It is no longer just about profit, but about value, about solving problems, about creating systems that benefit others while also supporting your own growth and independence. And this is where ethical wealth comes into focus, where success is measured not only by financial gain, but by impact, integrity, and alignment. And as you continue to walk this path, integrating these principles into your daily life, experimenting with intention, observing your thoughts, refining your beliefs, taking aligned action, you begin to see results, sometimes subtle, sometimes dramatic, but always instructive. And through this process, you are not just changing your circumstances, you are evolving your consciousness. This is the essence of conscious evolution, the recognition that growth is not accidental, but intentional, that you have the capacity to shape not only your external reality, but your internal landscape. And as you do, you begin to embody a new identity, one that is not defined by past limitations, but by present awareness and future potential. And so, as this journey continues to unfold within you, the invitation remains open, not as a command, but as a possibility to test these ideas for yourself, to apply them in your own life, to observe what changes, to refine what works, to question what does not, because ultimately, the most powerful evidence you will ever encounter is your own experience. And as you begin to trust that experience, something shifts quietly yet profoundly. You stop searching for permission and you start creating with intention. Chapter 2. The Golden Middle Path. Momentum begins to build the moment you realize that awareness alone is not enough, that insight without action remains a beautiful illusion. And as that realization settles into your thinking, a deeper truth quietly unfolds. You are not here to escape the physical world in search of higher knowledge. You are here to integrate both, to walk a path where inner intelligence and outer execution move together in precise harmony. And as that harmony starts to take shape within you, the idea of combining activity with metaphysics begins to feel less like philosophy and more like a practical operating system for life, where your goals, your business decisions, your financial strategies are no longer driven by stress or survival, but guided by clarity, intention, and alignment, where you wake up not only with a plan, but with a state of mind that supports that plan, because neuroscience now shows that your brain performs differently when your emotional state is coherent, when your thoughts are intentional, when your focus is directed rather than scattered. From that place, productivity stops being about pushing harder and starts becoming about moving smarter, because you begin to recognize that effort alone does not create wealth. Aligned effort does. And that alignment is cultivated through awareness, through meditation, through conscious recalibration of your internal patterns, allowing your subconscious mind to support your ambitions instead of silently resisting them. As this integration deepens, another outdated belief begins to dissolve, the idea that you must travel far, withdraw from society, or disconnect from modern life to access deeper truths. And suddenly it becomes clear, no ticket to a distant land is required to access profound awareness, because the gateway you are searching for is already within you, available in every moment you choose presence over distraction, intention over reaction. That shift brings an unexpected sense of empowerment, especially for those navigating fast-paced careers, entrepreneurship, or creative pursuits, because it means you do not have to abandon your ambitions to grow spiritually. You refine them, you elevate them, you bring consciousness into your work, into your decisions, into the way you create value in the world. And as you continue to explore this integration, something fascinating begins to emerge, a relationship with what can only be described as the universe itself, not as an abstract concept, but as a responsive system, a field of intelligence that interacts with your awareness, your expectations, your emotional frequency. And when quantum physics speaks of observers influencing outcomes, it is pointing toward this dynamic interaction, where your focus becomes a form of participation in reality. Through this lens, the universe stops feeling random and starts revealing patterns, feedback loops, subtle signals that guide you when you are paying attention. And this is where the concept of active information becomes deeply practical, because the information you consistently hold in your mind, the beliefs you reinforce, the images you visualize, they begin to organize your perception, your behavior, and ultimately your results. As you notice this interplay, a powerful realization takes root. This process is not reserved for a select few. It is not limited by background, education, or circumstance. All can play in this field of creation, because every human being possesses the same fundamental tools: attention, intention, emotion, and the ability to act. That inclusivity changes everything, because it removes the illusion of exclusivity around success, replacing it with responsibility, the understanding that while not everyone applies these principles, anyone can. And as you begin to apply them consistently, your life starts to reflect that commitment in subtle yet undeniable ways. At this stage, metaphysics begins to resemble something surprisingly familiar: an open-source system, accessible, adaptable, and constantly evolving, where knowledge is not hidden behind barriers but available to those willing to explore, test, and refine their understanding. And just like any open system, its power lies in participation, in experimentation, in personal application rather than blind belief. This is where your role becomes active rather than passive, where you stop waiting for external validation and start building internal certainty, where you treat your life as a living laboratory, observing how your thoughts influence your mood, how your mood influences your decisions, how your decisions influence your outcomes, creating a chain reaction that becomes increasingly visible over time. And as this awareness sharpens, the concept of mastery begins to take on a new meaning, not as perfection, but as consistency, the ability to return to alignment even when circumstances become unpredictable, the discipline to maintain clarity when distractions arise, the resilience to adapt without losing your center. Metaphysical mastery, in this sense, is not about controlling every detail of your reality, but about cultivating a stable internal state that allows you to navigate reality with intelligence and grace, where your reactions are intentional rather than impulsive, where your choices are guided by purpose rather than fear. Within this mastery, the golden middle path becomes your compass, a way of living that avoids extremes, that balances ambition with awareness, logic with intuition, action with stillness, allowing you to move forward without burning out, to grow without losing yourself, to build wealth without sacrificing meaning. And as you continue along this path, something shifts in your relationship with success itself. It no longer feels like something distant or elusive, but something that emerges naturally from alignment, from clarity, from the consistent application of principles that are both scientific and deeply human. That shift is where financial independence begins to transform from a goal into a byproduct. Because when your thinking is structured, your emotions are regulated, your actions are aligned, and your purpose is clear, wealth creation becomes a natural extension of who you are rather than a constant struggle to become something else. In this space, entrepreneurship becomes an expression of creativity and contribution, where you are not just building income streams, but designing systems that reflect your values, solving problems that matter, creating opportunities not only for yourself, but for others as well. And as this broader perspective settles into your awareness, gratitude begins to expand beyond moments of success into a continuous state of appreciation, what can be described as radical gratitude, where you acknowledge progress, recognize growth, and remain open to possibility even in uncertainty, strengthening your connection to the flow of creation. That flow, once felt, becomes something you learn to trust, not blindly, but through experience, through repeated evidence that when you align internally and act externally, outcomes begin to organize in ways that feel both intentional and surprising. And as this journey continues to unfold within you, there is a quiet confidence that begins to replace doubt, a steady awareness that you are not separate from the systems shaping your life, but deeply connected to them, capable of influencing them, capable of working with them. Right there, in that awareness, something profound stabilizes, a sense that you are not chasing success anymore. You are becoming the kind of person through whom success naturally flows, and that realization does not arrive with noise or spectacle. It settles gently, like a calm certainty, reminding you that the path you are walking is not about extremes, not about escape, but about integration, balance, and the quiet power of moving forward in alignment. Chapter 3. Higher powers use higher laws. There are forces shaping your life that do not announce themselves loudly. They operate quietly beneath the surface of what you call normal, guiding outcomes, bending probabilities, responding to patterns you may not even realize you are repeating. And the moment you begin to sense their presence, something within you becomes alert, curious, almost awakened to the idea that reality is far more responsive than it appears. As that awareness begins to expand from where you last stood, balanced between action and alignment, you start to notice that this balance alone is not the destination. It is the gateway, because beyond it lies a deeper layer of understanding, one where the rules you once believed were absolute begin to soften, revealing that there are higher laws at play, principles that operate beyond conventional cause and effect, principles that reward coherence, clarity, and consciousness. And as you step closer to these ideas, one subtle requirement becomes immediately clear: your openness determines your access, because an open mind is not just a philosophical trait, it is a functional tool. It allows new information to enter your awareness without resistance. It creates space for unfamiliar patterns to be explored rather than rejected. And neuroscience supports this by showing how cognitive flexibility enhances learning, creativity, and decision-making, enabling your brain to form new connections instead of reinforcing old limitations. Holding on to rigid beliefs, even if they feel comfortable, limits your ability to perceive new opportunities because your subconscious mind filters reality based on what it already accepts as true, meaning that if you believe something is impossible, your perception will actively ignore evidence that contradicts that belief, keeping you locked within a self-created boundary. As this realization settles deeper into your thinking, you begin to understand that expanding your awareness is not about blindly accepting everything, but about allowing possibilities to exist long enough to be examined, tested, and experienced. And this is where the bridge between science and metaphysics becomes incredibly powerful, because both disciplines, at their highest level, rely on observation, experimentation, and refinement. From this vantage point, the concept of higher laws begins to feel less mysterious and more practical, because what appears extraordinary is often simply misunderstood, and what looks like a miracle is frequently the result of principles operating beyond your current level of awareness. Much like how electricity once seemed magical before it was understood, harnessed, and integrated into everyday life. And as you continue to explore this idea, the phrase higher laws look like miracles begins to take on a deeper meaning. Because when someone aligns their thoughts, emotions, and actions with precision, outcomes can unfold in ways that seem improbable. Opportunities appear at the exact moment they are needed, solutions emerge without strain, connections form effortlessly, and from the outside, it may look like luck or coincidence, but from within the system, it is coherence. That coherence is what allows you to step into a state of co-creation, where you are no longer reacting to circumstances, but influencing them, not through force, but through alignment, where your internal state becomes the foundation upon which your external reality is built. And as you begin to operate within this framework, something interesting happens to your perception of effort, because while action remains essential, it becomes more efficient, more targeted, less driven by desperation and more guided by clarity, allowing you to move with intention rather than urgency. Within this space, the idea of the quantum shift becomes more tangible because you start to experience how small internal adjustments can lead to significant external changes, how a shift in belief can open doors that previously seemed invisible, how a change in emotional state can alter the way others respond to you, creating a ripple effect that extends far beyond what you initially expected. That ripple is amplified by what can be described as active information. The patterns you consistently hold in your awareness begin to organize your experience, influencing your focus, shaping your decisions, and ultimately guiding your outcomes, which means that the information you consume, the thoughts you repeat, and the intentions you set are not neutral, they are directional. As you become more conscious of this, intention setting evolves from a vague practice into a precise skill, one that requires clarity, emotional engagement, and consistency, because the more clearly you define what you want, the more effectively your mind can begin to align with it, filtering opportunities, guiding actions, and reinforcing behaviors that support that outcome. And yet, as you refine this process, another layer of understanding emerges, reminding you that while intention is powerful, it must be balanced with surrender, because trying to control every detail of how something unfolds can create resistance, limiting the very flow you are attempting to access. This is where the paradox of surrender becomes essential, allowing you to hold your vision with confidence while releasing attachment to the outcome, creating space for solutions to emerge in ways that may exceed your expectations, often arriving through pathways you could not have predicted. In this delicate balance, you begin to sense what is often referred to as non-local reality, The understanding that influence is not confined to physical proximity, that your thoughts and emotions are part of a larger field of interaction, a network of energy and information that extends beyond what you can see, connecting you to possibilities that are not limited by time or space. And as abstract as this may sound, its application remains grounded because it encourages you to focus on what you can control, your mindset, your actions, your consistency, while remaining open to outcomes that may unfold in unexpected ways. This openness naturally leads to a deeper sense of trust, not blind belief, but experiential confidence, built through repeated observation of how alignment influences results, how clarity reduces friction, how presence enhances decision-making. Within this evolving awareness, gratitude begins to transform into something more expansive, a practice that not only acknowledges what you have, but also reinforces what you are creating, sending a signal of completion even before the result fully materializes, strengthening your alignment with abundance. And as this practice deepens, meditation becomes a central tool, not as an escape, but as a method of calibration, a way to quiet external noise, observe internal patterns, and intentionally shift your state, allowing your subconscious mind to be reprogrammed with beliefs that support growth rather than limitation. Through consistent practice, your identity begins to evolve, shifting from someone who reacts to life into someone who participates in its creation, someone who understands that success is not random, but structured, influenced by principles that can be learned, applied, and refined. And as this identity stabilizes, financial independence begins to feel less like a distant dream and more like a natural extension of your alignment. Because when your thinking is clear, your actions are intentional, and your purpose is defined, opportunities for wealth creation begin to emerge with greater frequency and clarity. Entrepreneurship, in this context, becomes more than a career path. It becomes a vehicle for expression, a way to translate your ideas into value, to solve meaningful problems, to create systems that generate both impact and income, reinforcing the idea that ethical wealth is not only possible, but sustainable. And as you continue to move forward with this understanding, integrating higher laws into your daily decisions, something profound begins to settle within you. A quiet recognition that what once seemed extraordinary is becoming familiar, that what once felt distant is now accessible, that what once appeared miraculous is now understood as a natural outcome of alignment. That recognition does not demand attention. It does not need validation. It simply exists as a steady awareness, reminding you that the more open you remain, the more you allow yourself to explore, to question, to experience, the more these higher principles reveal themselves, not as distant mysteries, but as living realities woven into the fabric of your everyday life. Chapter 4. The Quantum Shift. Reality is not as solid as it feels, not as fixed as it looks, and certainly not as predictable as you were once taught. And the moment this truth begins to sink in, something inside you loosens its grip on limitation, as if the ground beneath your assumptions starts to shift, revealing a deeper layer of possibility that has always been there, quietly waiting for your awareness to catch up. That quiet recognition builds naturally from everything you have already begun to sense, that higher laws exist, that alignment matters, and now you are stepping into a realization that challenges the very foundation of how reality has been explained for centuries, because classical thinking, rooted in Newtonian mechanics, taught you that the universe behaves like a machine, predictable, linear, and separate from your influence. Yet modern discoveries in quantum physics have gently but firmly dismantled that certainty, showing instead that reality at its core is fluid, probabilistic, and deeply interconnected. And as this shift unfolds in your understanding, you begin to see that what once felt stable is actually dynamic. What once appeared independent is deeply relational. And this is where the quantum shift truly begins, not as a concept you memorize, but as a lens through which you experience life differently, where cause and effect are no longer rigid, but responsive to awareness itself. Within this emerging perspective, one of the most fascinating discoveries becomes impossible to ignore: the role of the observer. Because in the quantum world, particles do not behave in a fixed way until they are observed, meaning that observation itself influences outcome. And while this may sound abstract, its implication is profoundly personal. Your attention, your focus, your awareness are not passive. They are participatory. As you sit with that idea, allowing it to expand within your thinking, it begins to reshape how you view your daily life. Because if observation alters reality at the smallest scales, then your consistent focus, your repeated thoughts, your emotional patterns are shaping your experiences in ways far more significant than you may have realized. And neuroscience supports this by showing how attention strengthens neural pathways, reinforcing patterns that eventually become your default way of thinking and acting. This connection between observation and outcome leads you into a deeper understanding of energy itself, not as something mystical, but as something measurable and ever-changing. Because at the quantum level, everything is in motion. Everything exists as energy fields interacting with one another, and this energy is not static. It is constantly shifting, responding to inputs, adapting to conditions, reorganizing itself in real time. And as you begin to see yourself as part of this dynamic system, rather than separate from it, the idea of shape-shifting energy becomes more tangible, because your thoughts influence your emotional state. Your emotional state influences your behavior. Your behavior influences your results, creating a continuous loop where internal shifts lead to external changes. That loop is where manifestation becomes practical, not as wishful thinking, but as a structured process where clarity of intention, consistency of focus, and emotional alignment work together to influence the direction of your life, allowing you to move from reaction to creation. As this understanding deepens, something remarkable begins to take form, a new way of thinking that blends scientific insight with experiential awareness, often referred to as the dawn of quantum metaphysics, where ancient wisdom about consciousness meets modern discoveries about reality, creating a framework that is both intuitive and evidence-based. Through this framework, you begin to recognize that your mind is not confined to your brain, that your influence is not limited to your immediate environment, and this leads you into the concept of non-local reality, the idea that connection exists beyond physical proximity, that information and influence can extend across space and time in ways that challenge traditional logic. While this may seem difficult to grasp at first, its practical implication is simple. You are more connected than you think, more capable than you have been conditioned to believe. And when you align your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions, you begin to tap into a network of possibilities that extends far beyond what is immediately visible. And just as you start to settle into this expanded awareness, another intriguing phenomenon comes into view, often referred to as spooky action at a distance, a term used to describe how particles can influence each other instantly, regardless of the distance between them, suggesting that separation may be more of an illusion than a reality. This idea, while rooted in physics, resonates deeply with your own experiences, moments when you think of someone and they reach out, instances where opportunities appear just as you begin to focus on them, situations where timing feels almost orchestrated. And while these moments may have once been dismissed as coincidence, they now begin to feel like expressions of a deeper interconnected system. Within this system, information plays a crucial role, and this is where the concept of active information becomes central, because it suggests that information is not just descriptive, but directive. It carries influence, it shapes outcomes, it organizes patterns, and when applied to your life, it means that the thoughts you hold, the beliefs you reinforce, the intentions you set are actively guiding your reality. As you become more aware of this, intention setting transforms into a precise and powerful practice, one that requires clarity, focus, and emotional engagement, because the more aligned your internal state is with your desired outcome, the more effectively you can influence the direction of your life. At the same time, this process invites you to remain flexible, to adapt, to refine your approach based on feedback, because while you can influence reality, you are also part of a larger system that responds in complex and sometimes unexpected ways. This balance between influence and openness leads you back to the golden middle path, where you act with purpose while remaining receptive to change, where you pursue your goals with determination while allowing space for new possibilities to emerge. And as you continue to walk this path, integrating the principles of quantum physics into your daily life, something begins to shift at a deeper level. Your sense of identity starts to evolve, moving from someone who reacts to circumstances into someone who participates in shaping them. Through meditation, you learn to observe your thoughts without becoming attached to them, creating space between stimulus and response, allowing you to choose your actions more consciously. And over time, this practice begins to rewire your brain, strengthening pathways that support focus, resilience, and creativity. This internal transformation naturally extends into your external life, influencing how you approach work, how you build relationships, how you create value. And as your alignment strengthens, opportunities for growth and wealth begin to appear with greater frequency and clarity. Entrepreneurship, in this context, becomes an extension of your awareness, a way to channel your ideas into tangible outcomes, to create systems that reflect your values, to generate income in ways that feel both meaningful and sustainable. And as your understanding of these principles continues to deepen, gratitude becomes an integral part of your experience, not just for what is already manifested, but for what is in the process of unfolding, reinforcing your connection to the flow of creation. That flow, once recognized, becomes something you learn to trust, not as a passive observer, but as an active participant, someone who understands that reality is not fixed, that it is influenced by awareness, shaped by intention, and responsive to alignment. And in that awareness, there is a quiet sense of empowerment, a steady recognition that the world you experience is not separate from you, but intimately connected to the way you think, feel, and act. And as you continue to explore this connection, applying what you learn, refining your approach, something begins to settle within you, not as a sudden realization, but as a gradual knowing that the shift you once sought outside has been unfolding within you all along. Chapter 5. Powers of the Quantum Mind. Something extraordinary begins to unfold the moment you stop seeing your mind as a private, isolated space and start recognizing it as a gateway, a receiver, a transmitter, a dynamic interface connected to a much larger field of intelligence. And as this realization gently settles into your awareness, the boundaries you once assumed begin to soften, revealing that your thoughts are not confined within your skull, but part of an interconnected system that stretches far beyond what your senses can perceive. That sense of connection deepens naturally from the understanding that reality itself is responsive. And now you begin to feel that your mind is not just interpreting the world, It is participating in it, contributing to a shared field often described as global consciousness, where billions of individual awareness streams are constantly interacting, influencing, shaping the collective direction of human experience. And as you reflect on this, it becomes clear that every thought you entertain, every emotion you amplify, adds a subtle imprint to this field, meaning that your internal state is never truly isolated. It resonates outward, contributing to patterns that extend beyond your immediate environment. And in return, you are also influenced by the collective energy surrounding you. This interplay creates a fascinating dynamic, one where personal transformation and global impact are not separate pursuits, but interconnected processes. And as you elevate your own awareness, you begin to align with higher frequencies of thought, creativity, and intention, naturally accessing ideas and insights that feel as though they arrive from beyond your individual experience. From this expanded awareness, a new concept begins to take shape, one that has been described in various ways across disciplines, sometimes referred to as downloads from a larger informational field, where ideas, solutions, and innovations seem to appear fully formed, often in moments of stillness, clarity, or deep focus. And while this may sound mystical at first, neuroscience provides a grounded perspective, showing how the brain integrates vast amounts of information below conscious awareness, connecting patterns, synthesizing data, and presenting insights when conditions are optimal. Yet the experience itself often feels like receiving knowledge rather than constructing it. As you begin to trust this process, you notice that your most creative breakthroughs, your most strategic ideas, often emerge when you are not forcing them, but allowing space for them, during meditation, during quiet reflection, during moments when your mind is relaxed yet attentive. This understanding connects seamlessly with historical explorations into human potential, including experiments like Project Stargate, where individuals were trained to access information beyond conventional sensory channels, suggesting that perception may extend further than previously assumed. And while interpretations of such experiments vary, they point toward an undeniable curiosity about the untapped capabilities of the human mind. That curiosity invites you to explore your own potential, not from a place of skepticism or blind belief, but from a willingness to observe, to test, to experience, because the principles you are learning are not reserved for a select group. They are accessible to anyone willing to engage with them consistently and consciously. And as this realization takes root, a powerful truth emerges. Anyone can do this, not because it is easy, but because it is natural, because the same neurological structures, the same cognitive abilities, the same capacity for awareness exists within every human being, waiting to be developed, refined, and directed. This accessibility removes the illusion of exclusivity around success and insight, replacing it with a sense of responsibility, because once you recognize your potential, the question shifts from whether you can access it to whether you will choose to cultivate it. And as you begin to cultivate it, you start to notice that access to ideas, opportunities, and insights feels less restricted, almost as if you are tapping into an unlimited reservoir of possibilities, where creativity flows more freely, where solutions arise more naturally, where your thinking becomes less constrained by past limitations. This sense of unlimited access is not about having all the answers instantly, but about knowing where to look, how to align your state, how to create the conditions that allow clarity to emerge. And this is where practices like meditation, visualization, and intentional focus become essential tools, not as rituals, but as methods of tuning your awareness. As you continue to refine this tuning, your experience begins to take on a more intuitive quality, where decisions feel guided, where timing feels aligned, where actions feel purposeful, leading you into what many describe as the mystical dimension of life, not as something supernatural, but as something deeply natural that has been overlooked or underdeveloped. Within this dimension, logic and intuition begin to work together rather than in opposition, allowing you to navigate complexity with both analytical precision and creative insight, strengthening your ability to adapt, to innovate, to lead. This integration becomes especially valuable in areas like entrepreneurship and wealth creation, where uncertainty is constant and the ability to access deeper insight can make the difference between reaction and strategy, between hesitation and confident action. And as you operate from this integrated state, your relationship with effort begins to evolve, because while you still take action, it feels less like struggle and more like expression, less like forcing outcomes and more like allowing them to unfold through aligned movement. That alignment brings you into what can be described as a vibrational symphony, where your thoughts, emotions, actions, and environment begin to harmonize, creating a state of coherence that amplifies your effectiveness, your presence, and your impact. In this symphony, each element plays a role. Your mindset sets the tone, your emotions provide the energy, your actions create the rhythm, and when these elements are aligned, the results become not only more consistent, but more fulfilling. And as you continue to experience this harmony, gratitude naturally becomes part of your state, not as a forced practice, but as a genuine response to the flow of your life, reinforcing your connection to the process, strengthening your alignment with what you are creating. That sense of alignment, once established, becomes something you can return to, even when challenges arise, even when uncertainty appears, because you begin to trust not only the outcomes, but the process itself. And within that trust, something quietly transforms. Your identity begins to shift from someone seeking answers to someone accessing them, from someone chasing success to someone creating it, from someone reacting to circumstances to someone influencing them. This transformation does not happen all at once. It unfolds gradually, through awareness, through practice, through experience, and as it does, you begin to recognize that the power you once looked for outside has always been within you, not as a hidden secret, but as an inherent capability waiting to be activated, refined, and expressed. Chapter 6. The Power of Inner Purpose. There is a force within you that does not negotiate with doubt, does not shrink in the face of uncertainty, does not wait for permission, and the moment you begin to feel it, even faintly, it changes the way you look at your limitations, because what once felt impossible starts to feel like something simply not yet aligned. That shift grows naturally from everything you have already begun to experience. The awareness that your mind is connected, that your reality is responsive, and now you are stepping into something even more personal, something that sits at the core of your direction, your decisions, your drive, and that is your inner purpose, the silent engine behind every meaningful achievement. As this awareness deepens, you begin to recognize that the power to do what once seemed impossible does not come from external validation or perfect conditions. It emerges from internal clarity, from a sense of knowing that what you are pursuing is not random, not borrowed, but deeply aligned with who you are becoming. And neuroscience supports this by showing how intrinsic motivation activates stronger, more sustainable patterns of focus, resilience, and creativity. When your actions are connected to purpose, your brain releases different neurochemicals, enhancing persistence, improving problem solving, and increasing your capacity to endure challenges, which means that what feels impossible to someone disconnected from their purpose can become achievable for someone who is aligned with it. And as you begin to feel this alignment, Your direction becomes clearer, almost as if an internal compass starts guiding you, often referred to as your inner North Star, not something you need to search for externally, but something you uncover by paying attention to what consistently energizes you, what draws your curiosity, what feels meaningful even when it requires effort. Following this internal guidance does not mean the path becomes easy, but it becomes coherent, where your decisions begin to align with a larger vision, where distractions lose their grip, where your time and energy are directed toward what truly matters. From this place of clarity, something deeper begins to unfold, a shift in how you relate to others, to your work, to your environment, because purpose is not isolated, it connects, it expands, it creates impact. And this is where the concept of universal love begins to take on a practical meaning, not as an abstract emotion, but as a powerful state of coherence. When you operate from a place of genuine care, integrity, and contribution, your actions become more effective, your communication becomes more authentic, your influence becomes more sustainable, and research in psychology supports this by showing that pro-social behavior enhances well-being, strengthens relationships, and improves long-term success. This form of alignment creates what can be described as vibrational coherence, where your intentions, your emotions, and your actions are synchronized, allowing you to move through challenges with greater stability, making decisions that are not only beneficial for you, but also for those around you. And as this alignment strengthens, you begin to see that purpose is not something you wait to discover fully formed. It is something you develop through action, through experimentation, through paying attention to feedback, and this realization makes getting started far more accessible than it once seemed. You do not need perfect clarity to begin. You need direction. You need willingness. You need the ability to take small, consistent steps while remaining open to adjustment, because clarity often emerges through movement rather than before it. This is where many people hesitate, waiting for certainty, waiting for the perfect plan. But what you are beginning to understand is that action itself refines your path, that each step provides information, that each experience shapes your understanding, allowing your purpose to evolve rather than remain fixed. And as you begin to move forward with this mindset, the concept of mastery starts to take on a new dimension, not as a destination, but as a continuous process, something you build through repetition, through refinement, through deliberate practice. Mastery is not about doing something perfectly. It is about doing it consistently, learning from each attempt, adjusting your approach, strengthening your skills, and over time, this process creates a level of competence and confidence that feels natural rather than forced. Within this process, your subconscious mind plays a crucial role because repeated actions and thoughts begin to form patterns, creating automatic responses that support your goals, which means that what once required effort eventually becomes second nature. This transformation is supported by neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself based on experience, allowing you to rewire limiting beliefs, replace unproductive habits, and build new pathways that align with your desired outcomes. As you continue to engage with this process, your sense of identity begins to evolve, shifting from someone who is trying to achieve success into someone who embodies the habits, the mindset, and the behaviors that naturally lead to it. This identity shift is what allows you to navigate challenges with resilience, to adapt without losing direction, to maintain focus even when results take time to materialize, because your motivation is no longer dependent on immediate outcomes. It is rooted in purpose. And as your purpose becomes more integrated into your daily life, your approach to wealth creation begins to transform, because financial independence is no longer just about accumulating resources. It becomes a reflection of the value you create, the problems you solve, the impact you generate. Entrepreneurship, in this context, becomes an extension of your purpose, a way to bring your ideas into reality, to create systems that support both your growth and the growth of others, aligning profit with contribution. This alignment enhances your ability to make decisions, to recognize opportunities, to take calculated risks, because your actions are guided by a deeper understanding of what matters, reducing the noise that often leads to hesitation or confusion. And as you continue to operate from this place of clarity and alignment, gratitude begins to deepen, not only for what you have achieved, but for the process itself, for the growth, for the challenges, for the lessons that shape your journey. That sense of gratitude reinforces your connection to your purpose, creating a positive feedback loop that strengthens your motivation, enhances your focus, and supports your overall well-being. Through this continuous evolution, something subtle yet powerful begins to settle within you, a quiet confidence that does not rely on external validation, a steady awareness that you are moving in the right direction, even when the path is not fully visible. And in that awareness, you begin to trust yourself more deeply, your decisions, your instincts, your ability to navigate uncertainty, because you understand that purpose is not something you find once and hold on to forever. It is something you live, something you refine, something that grows as you grow. This realization does not arrive with intensity or urgency. It settles gently, like a steady rhythm beneath your actions, guiding you forward, reminding you that the power you seek is not something you need to acquire. It is something you activate, something you align with, something that has been within you all along, waiting for you to recognize it and bring it into motion. Chapter 7. The Space Between Thoughts. Silence is not empty. It is full of answers. And the moment you begin to notice the space between your thoughts, something remarkable starts to unfold, because in that quiet interval, beyond the noise of constant thinking, lies a level of clarity that cannot be accessed through effort alone, a state where insight emerges naturally, where direction becomes obvious without force. As this awareness gently connects with everything you have already begun to integrate, your sense of purpose, your alignment, your growing understanding of the quantum nature of reality, you begin to realize that action without stillness often leads to scattered results, while stillness before action creates precision. And this is where meditation before mission becomes not just a practice, but a strategic advantage. When you take time to quiet your mind, even briefly, you are not stepping away from progress. You are preparing for it, allowing your brain to shift from reactive patterns into a more coherent state, where the prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and creativity, becomes more active, and the noise of stress-driven thinking begins to fade. In that state, your subconscious mind becomes more accessible, patterns become visible, limiting beliefs can be observed without judgment, and new ideas can emerge with surprising clarity, giving you an edge that is not based on working harder, but on thinking more clearly. And as you begin to trust this process, another important realization takes shape, that success is rarely linear, that the path forward often includes setbacks, missteps, and moments where things do not unfold as planned. And instead of seeing these moments as failures, you begin to recognize them as part of a larger process of refinement. That understanding shifts your relationship with effort, because if at first you didn't succeed, it does not mean you are off track. It means you are gathering information, adjusting your approach, strengthening your resilience. And neuroscience supports this by showing how learning is enhanced through iteration, through feedback, through the willingness to adapt. With this mindset, persistence becomes more intelligent, less about repeating the same actions and more about evolving your strategy. And as you look at real-world examples, this principle becomes even more tangible. Consider Ray Dalio, often described as a hedge fund ninja, someone who built one of the most successful investment firms in the world. Yet his journey was not defined by uninterrupted success. It included significant setbacks, including a moment early in his career where he lost nearly everything. And instead of retreating, he used that experience to refine his understanding of markets, to develop principles based on radical transparency and continuous learning, ultimately creating a system that allowed him to navigate complexity with clarity. As you reflect on that, you begin to see how meditation and reflection likely played a role in cultivating that level of awareness, because the ability to step back, to observe patterns without emotional reactivity, is what allows you to respond intelligently rather than impulsively. That same pattern appears in the life of Oprah Winfrey, whose journey stands as a powerful example of rising against all odds, where early challenges could have defined her limits. Yet through resilience, self-awareness, and a deep connection to purpose, she transformed those experiences into a platform for influence, impact, and extraordinary success. Her ability to connect with others, to communicate authentically, to remain grounded despite immense visibility, reflects a level of internal alignment that goes beyond external achievement, suggesting that her success was not only built on opportunity, but on a cultivated inner state. And as you continue to explore these examples, the pattern becomes clearer. Unconventional paths often lead to extraordinary outcomes, as seen in the journey of Jerry Seinfeld, who developed his craft through consistent, deliberate practice, refining his material over time, embracing repetition, and committing to a process that may have seemed abnormal to others, yet ultimately led to mastery. His discipline highlights the importance of consistency, of showing up even when progress feels slow, of trusting the process enough to continue refining your skills, knowing that mastery is built over time. This idea of integrating discipline with awareness is further exemplified by Phil Jackson, often referred to as the NBA Zen master, who incorporated mindfulness, meditation, and philosophical principles into his coaching, creating teams that were not only physically skilled but mentally aligned. His approach demonstrates how inner work translates into external performance, how clarity of mind enhances teamwork, decision-making, and resilience under pressure, reinforcing the idea that success is not purely physical or strategic, but deeply psychological. As these examples begin to form a cohesive picture, another figure comes into focus, Steve Jobs, whose ability to envision products that transformed industries was closely linked to his emphasis on focus, simplicity, and intuition, qualities that are often cultivated through moments of stillness and reflection. His capacity to filter out noise, to concentrate on what truly mattered, allowed him to create innovations that resonated on a global scale, demonstrating the power of aligning vision with execution. Through these stories, a consistent thread emerges. Success is not random. It is structured, influenced by internal states, shaped by clarity, strengthened by persistence, and guided by a willingness to learn and adapt. And as you bring your attention back to your own journey, this realization becomes deeply personal, because the same principles that guided these individuals are available to you, not as distant ideals, but as practical tools you can apply in your daily life. Meditation becomes your starting point, a way to access the space between thoughts, to observe without judgment, to reset your focus, allowing you to approach your goals with clarity rather than confusion. Reflection becomes your guide, helping you learn from each experience, refine your approach, and continue moving forward with greater awareness. Consistency becomes your foundation, ensuring that progress continues even when motivation fluctuates, building momentum over time. And as you integrate these elements, something begins to shift. Your actions become more intentional, your decisions more aligned, your results more consistent, not because you are forcing outcomes, but because you are operating from a state of coherence. This coherence is what allows you to navigate challenges with resilience, to recognize opportunities when they appear, to act with confidence even in uncertainty. And as this way of operating becomes more natural, the evidence becomes clear, not only in the stories of others, but in your own experience, in the subtle changes you notice, in the increased clarity, in the improved focus, in the growing sense of alignment. That evidence does not need to be dramatic to be meaningful. It builds gradually, reinforcing your trust in the process, strengthening your commitment to continue. And in the quiet moments, in the space between your thoughts, you begin to sense something steady, something reliable, a source of clarity that is always available, reminding you that the answers you seek are not always found through more effort, but often through deeper awareness, through the willingness to pause, to listen, and to allow insight to emerge naturally. Chapter 8. Conscious Evolution. Change is not something that happens to you. It is something that happens through you. And the moment you begin to realize that your growth can be directed, refined, and accelerated with intention, a powerful sense of agency begins to take hold. Because evolution is no longer random, it becomes conscious. That awareness flows naturally from the stillness you have begun to explore, from the space between thoughts where clarity emerges, and now that space starts to reveal its deeper function. It is not just a place of calm. It is a place of transformation, where your brain, your behavior, and your perception begin to reorganize in measurable ways. As you continue engaging with practices like meditation and focused awareness, something remarkable starts to happen at a biological level. Your brain begins to change, not metaphorically, but physically, as neural pathways strengthen, new connections form, and areas associated with attention, emotional regulation, and decision-making become more active, meaning that your ability to think clearly, respond effectively, and remain composed under pressure is being upgraded in real time. And as these changes take place, the results are not always distant or delayed. They can appear surprisingly quickly, because even a short period of consistent practice can begin to shift your baseline state, allowing you to experience moments of clarity, improved focus, and reduced mental noise, reinforcing your motivation to continue. That reinforcement creates momentum, and with momentum comes an expansion in perception, what can feel like a form of enhanced awareness, where you begin to notice patterns that were previously invisible, where subtle signals become clearer, where your ability to read situations, understand people, and anticipate outcomes improves significantly. This heightened perception is not about becoming extraordinary in a mystical sense. It is about removing internal interference, allowing your natural cognitive abilities to function more effectively, giving you what can feel like a super perception, a clearer lens through which to navigate complexity. From this clarity, your ability to co-create with your environment strengthens, because you are no longer reacting blindly. You are responding with awareness, aligning your actions with your intentions, adjusting your approach based on feedback, creating a dynamic interaction between you and your circumstances. That interaction reduces blind spots, those unconscious patterns and assumptions that often limit your progress, because as your awareness expands, you begin to see where your thinking may be biased, where your beliefs may be outdated, where your habits may be holding you back. And once you see these patterns clearly, you gain the ability to change them, to replace limiting beliefs with empowering ones, to adjust your behavior in ways that support your goals, creating a feedback loop of continuous improvement. This process naturally influences your cognitive capacity, often experienced as an increase in mental sharpness, where your ability to process information, solve problems, and make decisions becomes more efficient, not because your brain is working harder, but because it is working more effectively. As this efficiency grows, your focus becomes more stable, less easily distracted, more capable of sustaining attention on what truly matters, allowing you to engage deeply with your work, your goals, your creative pursuits. That deep engagement leads to a noticeable increase in both productivity and satisfaction, because when your attention is aligned with your purpose, your actions become more meaningful, your results more fulfilling, and this alignment naturally enhances your sense of happiness. Creativity also begins to expand within this state, because when your mind is not cluttered with unnecessary noise, it has more space to explore, to connect ideas, to generate solutions, allowing you to approach challenges with innovation rather than repetition. And as these benefits accumulate, a subtle but important distinction begins to emerge, the difference between knowing and doing. Because understanding these principles intellectually is not enough, true transformation occurs when you apply them consistently, when you integrate them into your daily routine. This distinction is where many people hesitate, gathering knowledge without translating it into action. Yet what you are beginning to see is that even small, consistent practices can create significant change over time, making the gap between knowing and doing one of the most important spaces to bridge. Bridging that gap requires what can be described as essential work, the willingness to engage with your own patterns, to observe your thoughts, to challenge your assumptions, to commit to practices that may not always feel immediately rewarding but provide long-term benefits. This work is not always comfortable, because it often involves facing aspects of yourself that you may have ignored or avoided. Yet it is through this process that growth becomes real, that change becomes sustainable. And as you commit to this process, you begin to explore different techniques that support your evolution, discovering that meditation is not a single method, but a range of approaches that can be adapted to your preferences and needs. You may find value in focused attention practices, where you concentrate on your breath, training your mind to remain present, strengthening your ability to direct your focus. You may explore open awareness, where you observe your thoughts and sensations without attachment, developing a deeper understanding of your internal landscape. You may engage in visualization, using your imagination to rehearse desired outcomes, aligning your subconscious mind with your intentions, reinforcing neural pathways that support your goals. You may incorporate mindful movement, integrating awareness into physical activity, creating a connection between your body and mind, enhancing both clarity and energy. As you experiment with these approaches, you begin to discover what resonates with you, what supports your growth, what helps you maintain consistency, because the most effective practice is the one you are willing to sustain. And as this consistency builds, something begins to stabilize within you, a sense of progress that is not dependent on external validation, a recognition that you are evolving, that your thinking is becoming clearer, your actions more aligned, your results more consistent. That recognition reinforces your commitment, encouraging you to continue, to refine, to deepen your practice, knowing that conscious evolution is not a destination, but an ongoing process. Within this process, your relationship with yourself transforms, becoming more aware, more intentional, more aligned with your potential. And as this transformation continues, it extends into every area of your life, influencing how you work, how you connect, how you create. And in that quiet, steady expansion, you begin to feel something different, not a sudden breakthrough, but a gradual shift, a sense that you are no longer drifting through your experiences, but actively shaping them, participating in your own growth with clarity and purpose, allowing your evolution to unfold in a way that feels both grounded and expansive at the same time. Chapter 9. Meditate to co-create. Stillness is not the opposite of progress. It is the birthplace of it. And the moment you begin to experience meditation not as an escape from reality, but as a way to shape it, everything you have been learning starts to converge into something deeply practical, something you can use, refine, and rely on. As that realization gently builds on your growing awareness of conscious evolution, you begin to see that meditation is not just about calming your mind. It is about calibrating it, aligning your internal state with the outcomes you intend to create, allowing you to move from passive observation into active co-creation with a level of clarity that transforms how you approach your goals. From this place of curiosity and openness, getting started becomes far simpler than it once seemed. Because meditation does not require perfection, it requires presence. It begins with something as accessible as your breath, a steady rhythm that anchors your attention, allowing you to observe your thoughts without becoming entangled in them. As you sit quietly, even for a few minutes, you start to notice the constant flow of mental activity, ideas, memories, distractions, and instead of resisting them, you allow them to pass, gently returning your focus to your breath. And in doing so, you begin to train your mind, strengthening your ability to direct attention rather than being controlled by it. That simple act, repeated consistently, begins to rewire your brain, enhancing your ability to remain focused, reducing reactivity, increasing your capacity for thoughtful decision-making. And over time, this practice becomes less of an effort and more of a natural state you can access whenever you choose. As your familiarity with meditation grows, you start to develop your own rhythm, your own approach, creating what can be described as a personal practice framework, a cheat sheet that supports your consistency, where you understand what works for you, how long you prefer to sit, what techniques resonate most deeply. You might begin with focused breathing to stabilize your attention, then gradually expand into visualization, imagining your desired outcomes with clarity, engaging your emotions as if those outcomes are already unfolding, because your subconscious mind responds strongly to imagery and feeling, reinforcing patterns that align with your intentions. You may incorporate moments of gratitude, allowing yourself to feel appreciation not only for what exists but for what is in the process of emerging, strengthening your vibrational alignment with abundance, creating a state where your internal environment matches the reality you are building. As this practice becomes more refined, you begin to notice that timing can enhance its effectiveness. Certain moments in your day naturally support deeper focus, making them ideal for meditation. Often in the early morning when your mind is less cluttered, or in the evening when your day begins to settle. These prime times are not rigid rules, but opportunities, windows where your brain is more receptive, where your subconscious mind is more accessible, allowing you to imprint intentions more effectively, creating a stronger connection between your internal state and your external actions. And as you begin to align your practice with these moments, the results start to accumulate, often in subtle ways at first. A clearer thought here, a more confident decision there, a reduced sense of stress in situations that once felt overwhelming. Those small shifts may seem insignificant individually, yet together they create a powerful momentum, because each improvement builds on the last, gradually transforming how you think, how you feel, how you act, leading to outcomes that feel increasingly aligned with your intentions. This is where the idea of small shifts creating huge returns becomes real, because transformation does not always arrive through dramatic breakthroughs. It often emerges through consistent, incremental changes that compound over time, reshaping your habits, your beliefs, your identity. As you continue along this path, it becomes clear that meditation is not a quick fix. It is a long-term investment, a practice that evolves with you, deepens with experience, strengthens with consistency, reminding you that this journey is not about instant results, but about sustainable growth. That understanding brings you into a more grounded relationship with your progress, where you begin to see this process as a marathon rather than a sprint, where patience becomes an asset, where persistence becomes your ally, where the focus shifts from immediate outcomes to long-term alignment. And within this steady progression, something remarkable begins to happen. Your sense of control transforms into a sense of trust, not because you are relinquishing responsibility, but because you are recognizing that when you align your internal state and take consistent action, results begin to unfold naturally. This balance between effort and trust reflects the paradox of surrender, where you define your intentions clearly, commit to your practice, take aligned steps, and then allow space for outcomes to emerge, often in ways that exceed your expectations. As this balance becomes more familiar, you start to experience what can only be described as co-creation, where your role shifts from forcing outcomes to collaborating with the underlying intelligence of reality, where your ideas, your actions, your timing begin to feel guided rather than random. That guidance is not external in the traditional sense. It arises from within, from the clarity you cultivate, from the alignment you maintain, from the awareness you develop through consistent practice. And as you continue to engage with this process, meditation becomes less of a separate activity and more of a way of being, something you carry into your daily life, into your work, your conversations, your decisions. You begin to notice your thoughts more quickly, adjust your focus more intentionally, respond to challenges with greater composure, creating a continuous loop of awareness and action that supports your growth. Within this loop, your subconscious mind becomes an ally rather than an obstacle, reinforcing patterns that align with your goals, supporting behaviors that lead to progress, allowing you to move forward with greater ease. And as this alignment deepens, your approach to wealth creation begins to transform, because financial independence is no longer pursued through stress or urgency, but through clarity, strategy, and consistency, supported by a mindset that is stable, focused, and adaptable. Entrepreneurial decisions become more intentional, less reactive, guided by insight rather than impulse, allowing you to create value in ways that feel both meaningful and sustainable. That sense of alignment extends into your overall experience, creating a feeling of coherence, where your inner state and outer reality begin to reflect one another more closely, reinforcing your trust in the process. And as you continue to move forward, refining your practice, adjusting your approach, something settles quietly within you, a recognition that the power you are cultivating is not something temporary. It is something you are building, strengthening, integrating into who you are. In that quiet recognition, there is no rush, no pressure, only a steady awareness that each moment of presence, each breath of focus, each intention you set is shaping your path, guiding you forward in a way that feels both deliberate and natural, allowing your life to unfold with a sense of clarity that continues to deepen with every step. Chapter 10. Manifest Your Mission. Creation is not an accident. It is a process, and the moment you begin to see your life, your work, and your wealth as something you are actively designing rather than passively receiving, A new level of responsibility and possibility begins to emerge because what you once called luck starts to reveal itself as alignment. That sense of alignment flows naturally from the discipline you have been cultivating, the stillness you have been practicing, and now it expands into something more structured, something that connects your inner state with tangible outcomes, often experienced as a kind of wealth creation matrix, an invisible framework where your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and actions interact continuously to shape your financial reality. Within this matrix, nothing operates in isolation. Your mindset influences your decisions influence your behavior influences your results. And as you begin to consciously adjust each of these elements, you start to see how wealth is not just accumulated, it is generated through coherence. As this understanding deepens, your approach to building something meaningful becomes more intentional, leading you into what can be described as a metaphysical mission, a purpose-driven path that integrates your personal growth with your external success, requiring not just ambition, but alignment. And within this path, four essential elements begin to reveal themselves, not as rigid rules, but as guiding principles that support your progress: clarity of vision, emotional alignment, consistent action, and adaptability, each one reinforcing the others, creating a system that is both stable and flexible. When your vision is clear, your direction becomes focused, reducing unnecessary distractions, allowing you to channel your energy toward what truly matters. And when your emotional state is aligned with that vision, your motivation becomes more sustainable, less dependent on external validation. Consistent action then transforms intention into reality, bridging the gap between what you imagine and what you experience, while adaptability ensures that you remain responsive to change, adjusting your approach without losing sight of your goal. As these elements begin to work together, manifesting your mission becomes less abstract and more practical, because you are no longer relying on hope or chance. You are engaging in a process that integrates awareness with execution. This process often begins internally, through visualization, through intention setting, through aligning your subconscious mind with your desired outcomes. And as you consistently reinforce these patterns, your external actions begin to reflect them more naturally. Yet within this process, an important filter emerges, something that helps you distinguish between what truly aligns with your purpose and what is not, often referred to as the heart and gut test, a way of tuning into your internal signals. When an idea resonates deeply, when it feels both expansive and grounded, when it excites you while also making sense logically, it often indicates alignment, while ideas that create tension, confusion, or resistance may require further reflection. Learning to trust these signals takes practice, because they can be subtle, easily overshadowed by external noise or internal doubt. Yet as you become more aware, your ability to interpret them improves, guiding your decisions with greater precision. This growing clarity leads to another powerful realization, that what you are working toward is not reserved for a select few, that the outcomes you admire in others are not beyond your reach. And this is where the belief that it can happen for you becomes essential. Without this belief, even the most effective strategies can feel out of reach. Yet when you genuinely accept the possibility, your behavior begins to change. You take opportunities more seriously, you commit more fully, you persist through challenges with greater confidence. Examples of this can be seen across different fields, where individuals have taken ideas that seemed improbable and turned them into reality through alignment and action. Consider entrepreneurs who started with limited resources yet built impactful ventures by focusing on value creation, refining their approach through feedback, maintaining clarity in their vision while adapting to changing conditions. Think about creators who consistently produced work improving their craft over time, trusting that their efforts would compound, eventually leading to recognition and success. Reflect on leaders who faced uncertainty, yet relied on their intuition and strategic thinking to navigate complexity, creating systems that generated both financial and social value. Each of these examples demonstrates that powerful missions are not defined by where you begin, but by how you engage with the process, how you align your internal state with your external actions, how you persist through uncertainty. As you begin to shape your own mission, you may notice that it evolves, becoming clearer with each step you take, more refined with each experience. And this evolution is not a sign of inconsistency, but of growth. Within this growth, preparation becomes an essential phase, not as a delay, but as a foundation where you develop the skills, the knowledge, the mindset required to execute effectively. Preparation includes building your capacity for focus, strengthening your ability to manage stress, refining your communication, enhancing your problem-solving skills, all of which contribute to your ability to take meaningful action. At the same time, preparation involves creating an environment that supports your progress, surrounding yourself with resources, people, and systems that align with your goals, reducing friction, increasing efficiency. As you move from preparation into action, the principles you have been integrating begin to converge. Your clarity guides your direction, your alignment sustains your motivation, your actions create momentum, your adaptability keeps you responsive. And within this convergence, something begins to stabilize, a sense of confidence that is not based on certainty of outcome, but on trust in your process, in your ability to navigate challenges, to adjust, to continue. This trust allows you to take calculated risks, to explore opportunities that may not be immediately guaranteed, to step beyond your comfort zone while maintaining a sense of grounded awareness. And as you continue to move forward, your experience of wealth begins to expand beyond numbers, encompassing freedom, flexibility, impact, the ability to create value while living in alignment with your purpose. That expansion does not remove the importance of financial results, but it places them within a broader context, where success is measured not only by what you accumulate, but by what you contribute, what you build, what you become. Through this ongoing process, co-creation becomes more than a concept. It becomes your way of operating, a continuous interaction between your intentions and your actions, your awareness and your environment. And as this way of operating becomes more natural, you begin to notice that your journey feels less like a series of isolated efforts and more like a cohesive flow, where each step connects to the next, where each decision builds on the last. In that flow, there is a quiet sense of direction, a steady movement forward, guided not by urgency, but by clarity, not by pressure, but by purpose, allowing you to continue shaping your path with intention, knowing that what you are creating is not just an outcome, but an expression of who you are becoming. Chapter 11. Desire, but don't thirst. Desire can build your future, but desperation can quietly destroy your peace. And the moment you begin to feel the difference between the two, something shifts inside you, because what once felt like ambition starts to reveal whether it is rooted in clarity or in lack. That distinction naturally grows from everything you have been integrating: the awareness of co-creation, the discipline of meditation, the alignment between thought and action, and now you are stepping into a more refined layer of mastery, where your emotional relationship with your goals becomes just as important as the goals themselves. As you sit with this idea, you begin to notice how easily desire can turn into thirst, how a healthy intention to create wealth can slowly become an anxious need to prove something, to escape something, to validate something. And in that transition, the energy behind your actions begins to change. When you are thirsty in this sense, when you feel an urgent, almost restless need for outcomes, your thinking narrows, your decisions become reactive, your focus shifts from long-term value to short-term relief, and neuroscience shows that stress-driven states reduce your ability to think strategically, limiting access to higher cognitive functions. This is why thirst quenches happiness, not because wanting more is wrong, but because the emotional intensity of needing more creates a constant sense of insufficiency, where even progress feels incomplete, where achievements lose their satisfaction quickly, replaced by the next unmet expectation. And as you begin to recognize this pattern, a powerful opportunity emerges, the ability to shift from chasing results to aligning with them, from forcing outcomes to allowing them through focused, intentional action. That shift does not remove ambition, it refines it, transforming desire into something grounded, something stable, something that drives you forward without destabilizing your inner state. Within this refined perspective, you begin to examine your reasons for creating wealth, and this is where another important distinction becomes clear: the difference between strong and weak reasons. Weak reasons often come from comparison, from external pressure, from the need to prove your worth, from the desire to escape discomfort. And while these reasons can generate temporary motivation, they are rarely sustainable because they are rooted in lack rather than purpose. When your actions are driven by weak reasons, you may find yourself constantly seeking validation, measuring your progress against others, feeling a sense of urgency that never quite resolves, because the underlying motivation is not aligned with your deeper values. Strong reasons, on the other hand, emerge from clarity, from a genuine desire to create value, to build something meaningful, to expand your capabilities, to contribute in ways that feel authentic. And these reasons create a different kind of energy, one that is steady, resilient, and sustainable. As you begin to connect with stronger motivations, your relationship with wealth starts to evolve, because it is no longer just about accumulation, it becomes about expression, about using resources as a way to amplify your impact, to create opportunities, to support growth, both for yourself and for others. This shift in motivation naturally influences your behavior, because when your reasons are strong, you are more willing to engage in the process, to persist through challenges, to invest time and energy into developing your skills, your systems, your strategies. And as you continue to operate from this place, the paradox of surrender begins to reveal itself more clearly, because while you remain committed to your goals, you release the emotional tension attached to immediate outcomes, allowing your actions to be focused without being forced. This balance creates a state of flow, where you are fully engaged in what you are doing, yet not overwhelmed by the need for instant results, where your attention is on the quality of your actions rather than the speed of your achievements. In this state, your mind becomes more creative, your decisions more thoughtful, your ability to recognize opportunities more refined, because you are not clouded by urgency or anxiety. And as this way of operating becomes more familiar, you begin to notice that your experience of success starts to change, because you are no longer waiting for external milestones to feel fulfilled. You are finding satisfaction in the process itself, in the act of creating, in the act of growing. This does not mean you lose your drive. It means your drive becomes more intelligent, more aligned, more effective, allowing you to pursue ambitious goals while maintaining a sense of inner stability. Within this stability, gratitude begins to deepen, not as a forced practice, but as a natural response to being present, to recognizing what is already working, to appreciating the progress you are making, even as you continue to move forward. That sense of gratitude reinforces your alignment, creating a positive feedback loop that supports both your well-being and your productivity, allowing you to sustain your efforts over the long term. And as you continue to integrate these principles, your identity begins to shift once again, from someone who is chasing wealth to someone who is creating it, from someone who feels pressure to achieve to someone who feels purpose in the process. This identity shift is subtle, yet powerful, because it changes how you approach each day, how you make decisions, how you respond to challenges, allowing you to operate from a place of confidence rather than urgency. Through this transformation, you begin to understand that desire is not something to suppress. It is something to refine, to align, to use as a guiding force rather than a source of stress. And as you hold that understanding, something within you settles, a quiet sense of balance, where ambition and peace coexist, where progress and presence support each other, where you can move forward with clarity without losing your center. In that space, your journey continues, not driven by the need to prove, but guided by the desire to create, allowing your path to unfold with a sense of ease that feels both grounded and expansive at the same time. Chapter 12. Question your beliefs. What you believe is not always true, yet it quietly shapes everything you experience. And the moment you begin to question the invisible assumptions guiding your decisions, your reactions, your expectations, a profound shift begins, because you are no longer operating on autopilot. You are stepping into conscious authorship of your reality. That awareness flows directly from the balance you have started to cultivate, where desire is no longer driven by urgency, where your inner state feels more stable, and now you are ready to look deeper, to examine the internal architecture that has been influencing your life long before you became aware of it. As you sit with this idea, something becomes clear. Your beliefs are not just thoughts. They are patterns stored within your subconscious mind, reinforced over time through repetition, emotion, and experience, shaping your perception of what is possible, what is safe, what is achievable. And when these patterns are aligned with your goals, they support your growth, they amplify your progress. Yet when they are misaligned, they act as subtle resistance, creating what can be described as vibrational blocks, limiting the flow between your intention and your outcome. These blocks are not dramatic or obvious. They often appear as hesitation, as doubt, as inconsistency, as a quiet voice suggesting that something may not work, that you may not be ready, that success may not be meant for you. And because they operate below conscious awareness, they can feel like reality rather than interpretation. The moment you begin to recognize these patterns, you gain the ability to remove vibrational blocks, not by forcing change, but by bringing awareness to what has been unconscious, because awareness itself begins to weaken the grip of these patterns. This process requires honesty, a willingness to observe your thoughts without judgment, to notice recurring themes, to identify where your expectations may be limiting your potential. And as you do this, you begin to uncover your limiting beliefs. These beliefs often originate from early experiences, from cultural conditioning, from repeated messages that shaped your understanding of the world, forming conclusions that may have once been useful, yet are no longer relevant to who you are becoming. You may discover beliefs about money, about success, about your own capabilities, beliefs that suggest wealth is difficult, that opportunities are scarce, that others are more capable. And while these beliefs may feel familiar, they are not fixed, they are adaptable. As you bring these beliefs into your awareness, you begin to see that they are not absolute truths, they are interpretations, and once you recognize them as such, you create space for change, allowing you to question their validity. That questioning is where transformation begins, because instead of accepting these beliefs automatically, you start to examine them, asking whether they are accurate, whether they are useful, whether they align with the direction you want to move in. And as you continue this process, you may notice that some beliefs are connected to deeper patterns, to emotional experiences, to identities you have formed over time, creating what can feel like ties that bind, connections that reinforce each other, making change feel more complex. These ties are not obstacles to be feared. They are structures to be understood, because once you see how they are connected, you can begin to address them more effectively, working with them rather than against them. For example, a belief about not being good with money may be connected to past experiences of failure, which may be linked to a broader identity of not being capable. And as you begin to unravel these connections, you gain insight into how your thinking has been shaped. This insight is powerful because it allows you to approach change with precision, focusing on the root rather than the surface, creating shifts that are more sustainable. And as you engage with this process, you begin to explore ways to deactivate limiting beliefs, not by suppressing them, but by replacing them with new patterns that are aligned with your goals. This involves repetition, reinforcement, and emotional engagement, because your subconscious mind responds to consistency and intensity, meaning that new beliefs must be practiced, felt, and integrated over time. You may begin by introducing new perspectives, affirming possibilities that challenge your previous assumptions, visualizing outcomes that align with your intentions, allowing yourself to experience these scenarios as if they are real. At the same time, you continue to observe your reactions, noticing when old patterns arise, responding to them with awareness rather than automatic acceptance, gradually weakening their influence. This process is supported by neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to reorganize itself based on new experiences, meaning that each time you reinforce a new belief, you are literally reshaping your neural pathways, creating a foundation for new behavior. As these new patterns begin to take hold, your perception starts to shift. Opportunities that were once overlooked become visible. Challenges that once felt overwhelming become manageable. Decisions that once felt uncertain become clearer. This shift is not immediate. It unfolds gradually, through consistent practice, through repeated engagement, through a willingness to stay present with the process. And as you continue, you begin to notice that your internal dialogue changes, becoming more supportive, more aligned, more focused on possibilities rather than limitations. This change influences your actions, encouraging you to take steps you may have previously avoided, to explore opportunities you may have dismissed, to engage with your goals in a more confident way. And as your actions change, your results begin to change, reinforcing your new beliefs, creating a feedback loop that supports your growth, strengthening your alignment between intention and outcome. Within this evolving process, you begin to feel a greater sense of freedom, not because external conditions have suddenly shifted, but because your internal constraints have begun to loosen, allowing you to operate with greater clarity and confidence. That freedom is not about eliminating all challenges. It is about approaching them with a mindset that is flexible, adaptive, capable of finding solutions rather than becoming stuck. And as this mindset becomes more integrated, your ability to co-create your reality strengthens, because you are no longer working against hidden resistance. You are working with a system that supports your intentions. In that alignment, something settles quietly within you, a recognition that the limits you once accepted were never fixed, that they were shaped by beliefs that can be changed, refined, expanded. And as you hold that awareness, you begin to move forward differently, not with force, not with urgency, but with a steady sense of clarity, knowing that each belief you examine, each pattern you adjust, each step you take is shaping a reality that is increasingly aligned with who you are choosing to become. Chapter 13. The Power of Words. Words are not just sounds. They are signals. And the moment you begin to recognize that every sentence you speak is shaping your internal chemistry, influencing your neural pathways, and directing your attention, a new level of awareness begins to emerge. Because language is no longer casual, it becomes intentional. That realization flows naturally from the beliefs you have been questioning. Because once you understand that your thoughts create patterns, you begin to notice that your words are the vehicles through which those thoughts gain momentum, reinforcing what you focus on, amplifying what you repeat, embedding ideas deeper into your subconscious mind. As you sit with this awareness, something subtle becomes clear. The phrases you use daily, whether spoken aloud or repeated internally, are constantly programming your perception, shaping how you interpret situations, how you respond to challenges, how you define your identity. Within this understanding, certain words carry more weight than others, not because they are magical in isolation, but because of the meaning and emotion you attach to them, creating a measurable impact on your state of mind. You begin to notice that words like clarity, focus, growth, value, and alignment naturally direct your attention toward constructive outcomes, while words rooted in limitation, hesitation, or doubt can reinforce patterns that restrict your potential. This is where the idea of powerful words becomes practical, not as a fixed list you memorize, but as a conscious selection of language that supports your direction, allowing you to choose words that elevate your thinking rather than diminish it. As you refine your language, you may find yourself gravitating toward expressions that reinforce possibility, statements that affirm your ability to learn, adapt, and create, phrases that align with the person you are becoming rather than the person you once were. And as you continue to practice this, your internal dialogue begins to shift, becoming more supportive, more focused, more aligned with your intentions, creating a foundation that strengthens your actions. This shift extends beyond isolated words into the way you carry yourself through your daily life. Because language is not only spoken, it is embodied, reflected in your posture, your tone, your presence, leading you into what can be described as walking with a purpose. When your words and your actions are aligned, your communication becomes more coherent, your intentions become clearer, your influence becomes more effective, because you are not just saying something, you are expressing it with consistency across multiple levels. This alignment creates a form of authenticity that others can sense, where your confidence is not forced, but grounded, where your communication feels natural, where your presence reinforces your message. Mantras become a powerful tool within this process, not as repetitive phrases without meaning, but as intentional statements that you return to consistently, reinforcing specific patterns in your mind, guiding your focus, stabilizing your state. When you repeat a phrase that aligns with your goals, especially when combined with emotion and visualization, you begin to strengthen the neural pathways associated with that belief, making it more accessible, more automatic. Over time, these repetitions begin to influence your default thinking, allowing you to respond to situations with greater clarity, to maintain focus even under pressure, to align your actions with your intentions more consistently. As this practice deepens, you begin to explore ways to amplify your words, understanding that it is not just what you say, but how you say it, the energy behind your language, the conviction in your tone, the consistency in your actions. Emotion plays a critical role here, because your subconscious mind responds strongly to feeling, meaning that when your words are backed by genuine emotion, they become more impactful, more effective in shaping your internal state. Visualization enhances this effect, allowing you to see and feel the outcomes associated with your words, creating a multi-sensory experience that reinforces your intentions, making them more tangible, more real. Consistency then ensures that these patterns are maintained, because repetition over time is what transforms temporary states into lasting traits, allowing your language to become an integrated part of your identity. As you continue to align your words with your intentions, something begins to shift in how you perceive challenges, because instead of describing situations in ways that reinforce difficulty, you begin to frame them in ways that highlight opportunity, learning, and growth. This reframing does not ignore reality. It expands your interpretation of it, allowing you to approach situations with a mindset that is more flexible, more solution-oriented, more resilient. And as your language evolves, your interactions with others begin to change as well, because the way you communicate influences how others respond, creating a feedback loop that can either reinforce limitations or support expansion. When your words are clear, constructive, and aligned, your communication becomes more effective, your relationships more collaborative, your ability to influence outcomes more refined. This refinement extends into your professional life, where your ability to articulate ideas, present solutions, and engage with others becomes a key factor in your success, especially in areas like entrepreneurship and leadership. As you integrate these principles, you begin to see that words are not separate from action. They are part of it, guiding your focus, shaping your decisions, influencing your results. Within this integration, your awareness continues to expand, allowing you to notice not only what you say, but why you say it, recognizing patterns, adjusting your language in real time, creating a continuous process of refinement. And as this process becomes more natural, your internal and external communication begin to align, creating a sense of coherence that supports your growth, your creativity, your ability to navigate complexity. In that coherence, something settles quietly, a recognition that your voice, both internal and external, is a powerful tool, one that can either reinforce old patterns or create new possibilities, depending on how you choose to use it. And as you hold that awareness, you begin to move forward with greater intention, selecting your words with care, expressing your ideas with clarity, allowing your language to become a reflection of the alignment you are building, guiding you toward outcomes that feel both meaningful and achievable. Chapter 14. The Power of Intention. Intention is where possibility begins to organize itself. It is the invisible blueprint behind every visible result. And the moment you start setting intentions consciously rather than drifting through scattered desires, your life begins to feel less accidental and more directed, as if the current you are swimming in suddenly aligns with where you actually want to go. That sense of direction builds naturally from the awareness you have developed around words, beliefs, and internal alignment, and now it sharpens into something more precise. Because intention is not just a thought, it is a decision infused with clarity, emotion, and expectation, guiding your focus and influencing your actions at every level. As you begin to explore this deeper, you notice that not all intentions are created equally, that they operate across different layers of your experience, often revealing themselves in three distinct forms: those tied to immediate actions, those connected to long-term outcomes, and those rooted in identity. When you set an intention for a specific task, such as focusing fully on your work or completing a project with excellence, you are directing your attention in the present moment, shaping how you engage with what is in front of you. When your intention extends toward a larger goal, such as building financial independence or creating a meaningful business, you are establishing a direction that guides your decisions over time, influencing the opportunities you notice and the actions you take. When your intention is tied to identity, such as becoming disciplined, creative, or resilient. You are shaping who you are at a foundational level, creating patterns that influence everything else. As these layers begin to align, your actions gain coherence, your decisions become more consistent, your progress becomes more sustainable, because your intentions are no longer fragmented, they are integrated. And as you move from understanding into application, something simple yet powerful becomes essential: putting your intentions into writing. Because when you translate thoughts into words on a page, you create a tangible reference point, something you can return to, refine, and reinforce. Writing engages multiple cognitive processes, strengthening memory, enhancing clarity, and increasing commitment, making your intentions more concrete, more actionable, more real. As you develop this practice, you begin to notice the value of reviewing your intentions regularly, not as a rigid routine, but as a way of reconnecting with your direction, ensuring that your daily actions remain aligned with your larger vision. Through this repetition, your intentions become embedded in your subconscious mind, influencing your behavior even when you are not consciously thinking about them, guiding your attention toward opportunities that support your goals. Yet within this process, an important balance emerges, because while clarity is essential, excessive specificity can sometimes limit your ability to adapt, leading you to focus too narrowly on a particular outcome rather than the broader direction. When you become too attached to a specific path, you may overlook alternative routes that could be more effective, more aligned, or more efficient. And this is where flexibility becomes a critical component of intention setting. Allowing space for variation does not weaken your intention, it strengthens it, because you remain open to new information, new opportunities, new possibilities that may arise along the way. This openness supports your ability to pivot when necessary, adjusting your approach without losing sight of your overall direction, maintaining momentum even when circumstances change. As you navigate this balance, maintaining clarity of vision becomes essential, because while your methods may evolve, your core intention remains steady, acting as a guiding force that keeps you oriented. This clarity is not about knowing every detail in advance. It is about understanding the essence of what you are creating, the value you want to provide, the impact you want to have, allowing you to make decisions that align with that vision. And as your intentions become more refined, you may begin to feel a natural inclination to protect them, to keep them confidential, not out of secrecy, but out of respect for their development, recognizing that premature exposure to external opinions can sometimes dilute your focus. When you share your intentions too early, especially with those who may not understand your vision, you risk introducing doubt or distraction, which can interfere with your alignment, making it more difficult to maintain clarity. By holding your intentions with a sense of quiet confidence, you allow them to mature, to strengthen, to integrate more deeply into your thinking and behavior. At the same time, you begin to explore ways to prime your intentions, preparing your mind and body to support them, using practices such as visualization, where you imagine your desired outcomes with clarity and detail, engaging your senses, allowing yourself to feel the experience as if it is already unfolding. This process activates neural pathways associated with those experiences, making them more familiar, more accessible, increasing the likelihood that your actions will align with them. As you continue to refine your approach, you begin to notice the importance of intending ease, not in the sense of avoiding effort, but in the sense of reducing unnecessary resistance, allowing your actions to flow more naturally. When you approach your goals with a sense of ease, your mind becomes more flexible, your creativity expands, your ability to solve problems improves, because you are not operating under constant pressure. This does not mean challenges disappear. It means you engage with them from a state of clarity rather than tension, allowing you to navigate them more effectively. And as you cultivate this state, something deeper begins to shift. Your relationship with outcomes starts to change, leading you into what can be described as ending the attachment habit. Attachment often creates rigidity, a need for things to happen in a specific way, at a specific time, and when reality does not match that expectation, it leads to frustration, stress, and resistance. By releasing this attachment, while still maintaining your intention, you create space for outcomes to unfold in ways that may be different from what you initially imagined, yet often more aligned with your overall direction. This is where the paradox of surrender becomes fully integrated, where you hold your vision clearly, take consistent action, and allow results to emerge without forcing them, trusting that your alignment will guide the process. As this trust deepens, your experience of creating begins to feel less like control and more like collaboration, where your role is to set direction, maintain alignment, and take action, while remaining open to the natural unfolding of events. Within this collaboration, your confidence grows, not because you can predict every outcome, but because you understand your ability to navigate whatever arises, to adjust, to continue moving forward. And as you continue to live with intention, something settles within you, a steady awareness that your life is not defined by chance, but shaped by the clarity you cultivate, the focus you maintain, the actions you take. In that awareness, your journey continues to unfold, not with urgency, not with pressure, but with a quiet sense of direction, where each intention you set becomes a step forward, guiding you toward a reality that reflects not only what you want to achieve, but who you are choosing to become. Chapter 15. The Paradox of Surrender. Control feels powerful, yet the deepest power often arrives the moment you release your grip. And when you first hear that, it may sound contradictory, almost unsettling, because everything you have been taught about success seems to revolve around pushing harder, holding tighter, forcing outcomes into existence. That tension between effort and ease has been quietly present throughout your journey, and now it reveals itself more clearly, inviting you into a deeper understanding of surrender, not as weakness, but as a refined form of strength, one that operates beyond force and into alignment. As you sit with this idea, the meaning of surrender begins to evolve, no longer associated with defeat or passivity, but understood as a conscious decision to release resistance, to stop fighting against what is, while remaining fully engaged in what can be created. This is not about stepping back from your goals. It is about stepping out of the emotional friction that often surrounds them, allowing your actions to flow more naturally, your thinking to become clearer, your perception to expand. Within this clarity, you begin to notice how attachment has been shaping your experience, how the need for specific outcomes, specific timelines, specific validations has been creating pressure, narrowing your focus, limiting your ability to see alternative possibilities. Letting go of attachment does not mean abandoning your vision. It means releasing the rigid expectations that can interfere with your progress, allowing space for outcomes to unfold in ways that may be different, yet often more aligned. As this understanding deepens, a crucial distinction becomes clear: the difference between surrender and giving up, because they may appear similar on the surface, yet they operate from entirely different intentions. Giving up is rooted in resignation, a withdrawal of effort, a loss of belief, a decision to stop moving forward, often driven by frustration or fatigue. Surrender, in contrast, is rooted in awareness, a conscious release of resistance while maintaining commitment, a decision to continue moving forward with greater clarity and less tension. This distinction changes everything, because it allows you to remain active in your pursuit while freeing yourself from the emotional burden that often accompanies it, creating a state where effort and ease coexist. As you continue to explore this balance, the role of surrender in manifestation becomes more evident, because manifestation is not simply about thinking or acting. It is about aligning your internal state with your external actions, and resistance disrupts that alignment. When you are attached, when you are forcing, your energy becomes fragmented, your focus becomes scattered, your actions become less effective, because they are driven by tension rather than clarity. When you surrender, your energy stabilizes, your focus sharpens, your actions become more intentional, more aligned, increasing the likelihood that your efforts will lead to meaningful results. This alignment is not passive, it is highly active, requiring awareness, discipline, and trust, because you are choosing to operate from a place that may feel unfamiliar at first, especially if you are used to equating effort with strain. As you begin to practice this approach, you may notice that emotional release becomes an important part of the process, because suppressed emotions can create internal resistance, influencing your thinking, your behavior, your ability to stay present. Allowing yourself to feel and release these emotions, rather than avoiding or suppressing them, creates space within your system, reducing tension, increasing clarity, enhancing your ability to respond effectively. This release is not chaotic, it is intentional, a recognition that emotions are signals, not obstacles, guiding you toward areas that require attention, understanding, integration. As emotional clarity increases, creativity begins to expand, because your mind is no longer constrained by unresolved tension, allowing new ideas to emerge, new connections to form, new possibilities to become visible. Creativity thrives in openness, in flexibility, in the absence of excessive control, and as you surrender rigid expectations, you create an environment where innovation can flourish, where solutions can arise more naturally. This connection between surrender and creativity becomes particularly valuable in areas such as entrepreneurship, where adaptability, problem-solving, and innovation are essential, allowing you to navigate uncertainty with greater confidence. As you integrate these principles, meditation becomes a powerful tool for practicing surrender, because it creates a space where you can observe your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses without immediately reacting to them. In that space, you begin to notice the patterns of attachment, the tendencies to control, the impulses to force outcomes, and through observation, you create distance, allowing yourself to respond rather than react. Each time you return to your breath, each time you release a thought, each time you allow an emotion to pass without resistance, you are practicing surrender, strengthening your ability to remain centered even in dynamic situations. Over time, this practice begins to influence your daily life, allowing you to approach challenges with greater calm, to make decisions with greater clarity, to engage with your goals with a sense of balance. As this balance becomes more integrated, you begin to experience a different kind of momentum, one that is not driven by urgency, but by alignment, where your actions feel more fluid, your progress more sustainable. Within this flow, the golden middle path becomes more tangible, a state where effort and ease, intention and surrender, action and stillness coexist, creating a dynamic equilibrium that supports both growth and well-being. This equilibrium does not eliminate challenges. It changes how you engage with them, allowing you to navigate complexity without becoming overwhelmed, to adapt without losing direction, to persist without burning out. And as you continue to move within this balance, something shifts in your perception of control, because you begin to see that true control is not about forcing outcomes. It is about mastering your response, your focus, your alignment. That mastery allows you to trust the process more deeply, to engage with uncertainty without fear, to remain committed without becoming attached, creating a state where your internal stability supports your external success. In that state, your journey begins to feel less like a struggle and more like a collaboration, where you are actively participating in the creation of your reality while allowing it to unfold in ways that may exceed your initial expectations. And as you settle into that awareness, a quiet confidence emerges, one that does not need to prove itself, one that does not depend on immediate results, one that simply knows that by staying aligned, by continuing to act with clarity, by allowing space for outcomes to emerge, you are moving in the right direction. Within that quiet knowing, your path continues to unfold, not through force, but through alignment, not through pressure, but through presence, carrying you forward with a sense of ease that feels both grounded and expansive at the same time. Everything you have explored so far has been pointing you toward one realization, that your life is not something you wait to understand. It is something you actively shape, moment by moment, thought by thought, decision by decision. And when that truth finally settles within you, it does not arrive as noise. It arrives as quiet certainty. That quiet certainty grows from the balance you have learned to cultivate, where intention meets surrender, where effort aligns with ease, where your internal state becomes the foundation upon which your external reality is built, allowing you to move forward not with confusion, but with clarity. As this clarity deepens, you begin to see how every concept you have encountered connects into a single, unified experience, the golden middle path guiding you between extremes, the quantum shift reminding you that reality is more fluid than it appears, active information shaping the invisible patterns that influence your outcomes. Within this integration, your inner purpose becomes more than an idea. It becomes a compass, quietly directing your attention, influencing your choices, helping you recognize what aligns and what is not, while conscious evolution unfolds as a continuous process, not a destination, but a way of being. And as you continue to engage with this process, co-creation becomes your natural mode of operation, a dynamic interaction between your awareness and your environment, where your thoughts, emotions, and actions work together to produce results that reflect your alignment. At the same time, the paradox of surrender remains present, reminding you that while you are responsible for your actions, you are not required to control every outcome, allowing space for life to unfold in ways that may exceed your expectations. This openness connects you to the idea of non-local reality, where possibilities are not confined to what you can immediately see, where your awareness extends beyond the present moment, influencing and interacting with a broader field of potential. As you operate within this expanded perspective, radical gratitude becomes more than a practice. It becomes a state of awareness, where you recognize value in each step of your journey, appreciating progress, learning from challenges, maintaining a sense of balance. This state of gratitude supports your alignment, reinforcing positive patterns, enhancing your ability to remain focused, while scientific prayer, understood as intentional thought combined with emotional engagement, allows you to direct your attention with precision, strengthening the connection between your intentions and your actions. Within this framework, vibrational alignment becomes tangible, not as an abstract idea, but as the consistency between what you think, what you feel, what you say, and what you do, creating a coherent system that supports your growth. As you continue to integrate these principles, your approach to wealth begins to evolve, no longer limited to accumulation, but expanded into creation, where financial independence becomes a reflection of your ability to generate value, to solve problems, to contribute meaningfully. This perspective aligns naturally with entrepreneurship, where innovation, adaptability, and clarity are essential, allowing you to navigate complexity, to identify opportunities, to build systems that create both impact and income. At the same time, your understanding of neuroscience supports this journey, reminding you that your brain is adaptable, that your patterns can change, that your habits can be reshaped, reinforcing the idea that growth is always possible. As you engage with your subconscious mind, you begin to recognize how deeply it influences your behavior, your decisions, your perceptions, and through practices such as meditation, visualization, and intentional repetition, you gain the ability to influence these patterns. This influence is not immediate. It develops over time, through consistency, through awareness, through a willingness to engage with the process, allowing your internal state to gradually align with your desired outcomes. And as this alignment strengthens, your experience of manifestation becomes more grounded, less about sudden change, more about consistent progress, where your actions reflect your intentions, where your results reflect your efforts. Within this grounded approach, success stories become less about comparison and more about inspiration, reminders that what is possible for others can also be possible for you, provided you are willing to engage with the process. These stories highlight the importance of persistence, of adaptability, of maintaining focus even when results are not immediate, reinforcing the idea that growth is a journey rather than a single event. As you reflect on everything you have explored, you may begin to notice a shift in how you perceive yourself, not as someone searching for answers, but as someone capable of creating them, someone who can navigate uncertainty, who can adapt, who can continue moving forward. This shift is subtle, yet powerful, because it changes how you approach each day, how you respond to challenges, how you engage with opportunities, allowing you to operate from a place of confidence rather than doubt. And as you continue to move forward, you may find that your journey becomes less about reaching a final destination and more about the experience of growth itself, the continuous process of learning, adapting, creating. In that ongoing process, there is a sense of expansion, a recognition that your potential is not fixed, that your capabilities can develop, that your path can evolve, allowing you to explore new possibilities. As this awareness settles, you may begin to feel a sense of calm, a grounded confidence that does not rely on external validation, but is supported by your understanding of the principles you have integrated. And from that place, your actions become more intentional, your decisions more aligned, your progress more sustainable, allowing you to continue shaping your life in ways that reflect your values and your vision. If this journey has resonated with you, if you have found value in these ideas, take a moment to acknowledge that, because awareness is the first step toward transformation, and every insight you apply has the potential to create meaningful change. You are invited to continue exploring, to keep refining your understanding, to stay engaged with the process, allowing your growth to unfold naturally over time. And if you want to keep expanding your perspective, to explore more ideas like these, consider supporting this journey by liking, sharing, and subscribing to CliffNote Chronicles, so you can stay connected with future audiobooks that continue to bridge science, mindset, and meaningful success. As you move forward from here, carry with you the understanding that your path is yours to shape, your potential is yours to explore, and your ability to create is already within you, quietly waiting to be expressed.